Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Lubbock Symphony's ClefNotes. My name is Galen Wixson. I am president and CEO of the Lubbock Symphony. And today we have a very special guest. It is my honor to introduce you all to our friend John Clare. John, how are you today?
I'm good, thank you. I'm excited to visit all my friends in Lubbock and hear some awesome music.
That's right. We have a concert coming up. John is curating our next sound concert, which will take place February 25th at the Luca Ice House here in Lubbock. And that concert starts at 7:30 p.m. And tickets can be had by visiting our website, lubbocksymphony.org, or by calling 806-762-1688. John, you just took on a new gig, didn't you?
I did. Lots of folks reached out as I left Symphony Hall at SiriusXM, and I'm excited to land in Chicago and be the morning host for WFMT, which has, of course, a very long history, and I think is the last commercial classical station in the United States.
Commercial, meaning that advertisers pay for real space on a commercial radio station.
Yeah, and we're part of a nonprofit that also has Chicago's PBS TV station, but we're actually a commercial signal and have been since the start.
Wow, how about that? Well, congratulations on that. That's a huge thing. What's the listenership there at WFMT? Do you know?
I don't know offhand. We've been improving in the ratings, and I think classical stations across the country have sort of seen uptick as everything kind of crazy happening in the world, all the stress, the politics, the different things. It's sort of a catharsis. So I
Yeah,
know audiences there in Lubbock are really tickled to have the station there,
that's right.
and of course the symphony.
And by the way, we need to thank our hosts here at Classical 105.7 for having us on today for Clef Notes. They've been wonderful in allowing the Lubbock Symphony to sort of talk about our programs and give us some time to speak to our listeners. And we're so pleased that they've given that to us. So thank you, Classical 105.7. So, John, let's talk about the program real quick that's coming up on February 25th. You've got a wide variety of music, but can you give me the general framework first before we dig into the specific pieces?
Yeah, and these sound concerts are so neat. It's a little different than being there in Buddy Holly Hall, which has got such incredible acoustics. This is a little more intimate. So, the idea behind this concert was a string quartet and a wind quintet,
Hmm.
sort of strings and winds, which are of course, very nice differences between the sounds, but also then combining them. I knew of this really romantic French composer, Louise Farrenc, whose music is starting to be recognized more and more. And she has this nonette, and it literally is a string quartet plus woodwind quintet. And so that was sort of my jumping off space to create this sound concert.
Was there ever a movie called No No Nanette?
There should be if there's not, right?
Sorry, I couldn't resist it, and it's right up your alley, and I know that. So um,
Yeah.
yeah, it is. so so you've got quartets, quintets. So let's go. So for our listeners, if they've never been to a sound concert, there's three sets of music that take place. They're about 20 minutes each with a 10-minute break in between. And the strategy there, because these are very interesting pieces, but they can be a little challenging to the listener. And so the strategy here is to give the listener a chance to sort of catch up, digest what they heard in that last set, go out, get another beer, go get a snack, and then get themselves ready for that next set of music. And I think that's worked really well for the sound concert because people have a chance to converse, sort of reflect on what they just heard, and get settled in for the next set. And that I think that's part of what really makes this series work. Yeah, go for it.
and I was going to say that with sound concerts, not only do you have these sort of nice bite-sized works that are sometimes challenging, sometimes surprising, that you can talk to the musicians, you can talk to me, and often I'm seeing the audience talk to each other and go, "Wow, I was really surprised by that." Oh, I didn't know Buddy Holly sounded like that with guitar and
Oh, that's right.
strings.
That's right.
Boccherini sounded this way. There are so many neat things that happen, and if you haven't been to Luca, the setup also has it's a little bit in the round, and there's some fun lighting. And again, it's so intimate. You really see expression on the faces. You see David sweating,
That's right. That's right.
you know, really up close and personal. And it's to me very cathartic to be able to experience music that way.
I think that's a great word too. And like you said earlier, I mean, the situation in the world right now, we need that catharsis. We need this escape to help us sort of recenter, refocus, and get on to the next day ahead. So this is going to be a lot of fun. So let's dig into that first set. You've got some really interesting works. I'll just kick it off here. You've got something called Five Squared, written about 2008 by Alex Shapiro. Uh, what are the characteristics that we're going to expect with that piece?
Sure. And Alex is such an interesting composer. She lives in the Pacific Northwest on an island. And if you catch her social media or some of her writings and blogs, she's often posting pictures of a whale in
That's
the
right. That's
you
right.
know, sh- she's posting the deer and these little foxes, and so nature, is in her music. And this is a beautiful quartet. Actually, the title Five Squared is literally representing 25 years of marriage, and it's
Oh,
written for her half sister and her husband's anniversary. So we often hear Pachelbel canon at weddings. We
yeah.
hear string quartets. Galen, about
Hmm.
gig
Oh yeah. Oh
quartet.
yes. Oh yes.
And so I thought it was appropriate to sort of start out with sort of this wedding piece. And Alex, again, such a great sound world, whether it's part of the geography of her composing this written for a friend. I think it comes across really well and a nice start to this program.
And she's a lot of fun. If you should visit her website if you haven't, because she really has a great sense of humor and is a little off the wall. So I think her music reflects that very much. Um, and that piece is 5 minutes long. While it's a little bit challenging, it's always a lot of fun just to kind of kick back and see what craziness she's going to throw at us. So I'm looking forward to that very much. Next, we have Paul Moravec and India Atlantic Impromptu, written in 2007 for Woodwind Quintet. So what's that like?
Sure. And again, it's a different sound world. Paul is such an original composer. He lives in New York, teaches on Long Island, and won the Pulitzer Prize. That's how I originally was
Mm,
introduced to his music from some Shakespeare inspired music. And he has a wide palette while he writes beautiful orchestra works, oratorios. Very interestingly, audiences, if they've seen The Shining,
mhm.
uh, be interested that Paul wrote an opera that was up for a Grammy this year based on that Stephen King book.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's a fascinating sound world. This is not as sort of out there as The Shining, but it's really a charming piece. All the players get an important part in this quintet. I just really enjoy
Hmm.
Paul.
Interesting. And then what's next?
So after that is a composer I'm just gaga over, and she has Chicago ties, which is kind of funny. I didn't know I'd be at WFMT when I put Jesse Montgomery's Voodoo Dolls on the program, and she is just such a cool violinist, composer, and she was in residence with Chicago Symphony and was curating concerts in Chicago when just a few years ago, as we came out of the pandemic, ended up putting seven Black composers on a program,
Hmm.
and they were dubbed the Blacknificent Seven.
Oh, wow.
Which, when I head to Texas, I think about Magnificent Seven sometimes,
Yeah.
Cowboys, all that sort of stuff. Well, Jesse's sort of the leader of the Blacknificent Seven. But this piece, and it's funny, these all come from about 15, 20 years ago. This is from 2008, Voodoo Dolls, and it's all about different dolls, a Barbie doll, those Russian dolls that sort of stack up, rag dolls, marionettes, and of course, voodoo dolls are in the mix. And she was inspired by some drumming in West Africa. And
Ah,
so the
okay.
rhythms in this piece are just awesome.
Mm-hmm. Sounds great. I'm really interested in this. Um, Voodoo dolls. Let's see, that's about 5 more minutes. And that leads us into the nonette.
Yes. So
And,
we've heard
and
chord.
listening to Farent's music, I'm struck by, I guess, fairly mid 19th century romantic, yeah. And I almost put her somewhere in the Schubert Mendelssohn area. Was that about right? Do you think?
Yes, that's perfect. And she championed folks like Schubert and would play Schumann quintet, Brahms quintet. She was influenced. She would play these works, and she is definitely of that sound work.
But she was Parisian, right? So she would not have hung out with the Viennese, probably.
No, but she was certainly in the salons. You think about Chopin and the
Yeah.
swooning women with the Liszt. She was certainly in that crowd, and certainly someone that was dazzling. I would think they say that Beethoven was such an incredible improviser. If he could have been around in Vienna when he played the piano, that it just stopped the house. She's that sort of artist that could improvise, and I would have died to be in her salon.
I'm always fascinated to think about how somebody from Paris eventually gets influenced by the Viennese and vice versa, of course, and how long it took for those influences to travel just a few hundred miles, which we would consider a half day's drive today, that it would have taken months to get this across. From Paris to Vienna, and how long it took for her to absorb all that and then incorporate it into her own style. It's always fascinating to think about.
Yeah, it's funny how Mannheim, Vienna, Berlin, Leipzig, and Paris. Paris was lucky because they had such an incredible opera, and the
Right.
ballet at the Paris Opera was such an influence, and those salons. So, um, opera was so in vogue then too.
Hmm.
Uh, Chamber music, it's interesting, might have been a little easier than some of those operas to get into.
And cheaper too for the patron that's paying for it. You can do it in a house, you can do it in the salon, and not rent or take over an entire cathedral or concert hall to do this work. All right, so now we're in part two of our. You've
Yes,
just gotten your new beer, you've gotten your popcorn refreshed or whatever else other snack that you want, and we're going to open with Sambiata. Is that how I say it? Sambiata by Miguel del Aguila, written in 2022. That's a very recent work.
it is, and I love. David knows Miguel from San
Okay.
Antonio,
David
but
Cho? Uh huh.
I met Miguel first because of some chamber groups that had done Miguel's music there in San Antonio, and he's now based in Seattle,
Ah.
but he's an Uruguayan American composer and was fascinating to talk to. He went to Vienna to study eventually,
Hmm.
and his teachers there said, embrace your heritage. And so he was trying to write a lot of fugues, symphonies, try to be on that classical path. And all of his teachers just said, steer into it, embrace that heritage. And so he has a tango concerto, he has all these incredible works. And so this is a quintet for winds. And again, such incredible rhythms in this. It's beautiful colors and rhythms.
They have so much fun. And then the longest piece of the evening is next. Panufnik, a name that I'm familiar with only because of you, because you're
Right?
such a fan. So we have Roxana Panufnik, the Faithful Gazelle. So
I
this
know
is this is
her from
a very unique thing.
Yeah, and I was a huge fan of her dad's music.
Yes.
And Andrei Panufnik was a respected conductor and composer who sort of was always in the wrong place at the wrong time. He was in Poland, and his music was sort of uh, shunned by the Russians. He moved to England, and then suddenly very avant-garde music, even though he was out in the West. It was suddenly popular to be sort of a 12-tone, very aleatoric composer. So he conducted and but did his own thing, was true to his heart. And one of my first conversations with Roxana was about her dad, and talking about how he would be singing or sort of dancing at home out in nature, and she'd try not to be embarrassed as a young lady, but sure enough, she caught the bug, and she's a composer. Uh, if they watched the coronation, would have heard music by Roxana Punjovnik. She wrote a beautiful songtus for King Charles,
Oh, Papa.
and so this is a new cool piece for clarinet and strings.
Great. And our soloist for that will be David Shea, our incredible principal clarinetist. And so we're so excited to have David performing that with us. So now we're going to take our second break. We're now back in the hall for part three. What are we opening part three with?
So this piece is, funny enough, another Chicago composer, and I hadn't realized that again. But Stacey Garrup is just a composer to watch, and this week I believe she's in Kentucky with a new piece,
Oh, busy.
uh, university, and she's been at Roosevelt. She writes music that uh, goes into deep stories. There's a Krakatoa viola concerto about sort of a fictional volcano, real volcano, but sort of fictional stories around Krakatoa.
Yeah.
Um, Writes just jubilant music. I mean, it is always interesting. And this story, Bohemian Cafe, celebrates a record label in Chicago called Sadie, and they represent Chicago artists. And so this was for a big anniversary. And so she wrote this really celebratory piece for woodwind quintet and bass, double
Ah,
bass.
okay. That should be really fascinating. And then we'll close the concert with the is it the finale of
Mhm.
the nonette? And that will close our concert. And I think at that point, the audience is going to be crazy. I think they're going to go crazy over this music. And I really have enjoyed pulling this program together with you. It's been so much fun. We've got lighting design by Michael Van. He'll also be doing the sound with his crew. David Cho will participate in some conducting for the evening where needed. But hopefully, we can keep that to a minimum because these groups are so going to be so well prepared and ready to go. So we're excited to have you here. I can't wait to get you on the ground in Lubbock again and put the finishing touches on our upcoming sound program. John Clare joining us by Zoom today. Thank you so much. It has been a pleasure speaking with you. Anything else you want to share with our audience before we go?
I just would say these sound programs are always fun to put together, but meeting folks, talking about it, and truly, whether it's Buddy Holly Hall, Luca, the idea of listening to music live with musicians in front of you, there's nothing like it. And after the last few years, we know what it's like not to be able to be in front of an audience. We love having an audience, and I know as an audience member, it's incredible to see the musicians of the Lubbock Symphony perform. So if you're free on the 25th, we hope to see you there because these are special moments and we don't want to take them for granted. So I appreciate being here, Galen. I'll see you at Luca, and appreciate being on the show.
Fantastic. Thank you, John. And good luck on the new job out in Chicago. I know it's going to go great for you. You take care.
Thank you.
Bye bye. And that was John Clare from Chicago joining us by Zoom. For all of you, just to wrap up our program today, we have another program coming up after the sound concert on February 25th. On March 8th, we will have our next Masterworks concert. This will be the fourth Masterworks of our 5-concert series. This will be Masterworks 4, conducted by Maestro Peter Bay of the Austin Symphony and the fantastic pianist John Camara Parker, joining Peter to perform the Tchaikovsky Piano Concerto, probably the most well-known piano concerto in our history, in our music history. The first half of that program will include the Felix Mendelssohn Fair Melusina Overture and the Carl Nielsen Symphony No. 1. So again, to get tickets to all of our programs, go to lubbocksymphony.org or give us a call, 806-762-1688. This is Galen Wixson, President and CEO of the Lubbock Symphony, wishing you well and thank you for listening.